Good morning, everyone. We set aside this time for brief announcements that will be of interest to our community and friends. Please be succinct when announcing upcoming events or updates. If you have an announcement, please line up on the ramp or aisle here or raise your Zoom hand. When Julia or I call on you, come up to the podium, unmute yourself, and speak. Then speak.
I have two. Okay. Tomorrow is the women's group at 1:30, so be here. We're going to play some drums and some instruments and also talk about our two favorite places, things to do in Cambria. The second one is from Diane DeMarco. She's not here today. Our congregational circle will be next Sunday. We will form a circle for sharing on the subject of belonging and how you experience it in this church. Please join us for mutual support and topical conversation. Okay, thank you.
And along those same lines, the men's group will meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. here in the sanctuary and on Zoom. I'll be able to set up the Zoom connection. And among the things we're going to talk about, you're encouraged to bring a photo or a memory of someone from your family's past that you might want to share with the group. 10 a.m. tomorrow.
In the absence of the Schwabbies, who should be back soon, I want to remind everyone that we're taking photographs after the service next week. That's the 8th, right? It's come upon us quickly. So please hang around and just let us take a few formal photographs for our new brochure after the service next week.
First of all, I want to thank everyone that made it to my solo show at the Cambria Center for the Arts. There's many of you here, and those of you who have not made it by or who want to go by again, it will be up until August 30th. Thank you. As mentioned, next week, Diane DeMarco will host a congregational circle, The Art of Belonging. Let us take a moment to still our hearts, quiet our minds, and center ourselves. Throughout history and across cultures, artists have turned to the landscape not only to depict the natural world, but to express humanity's deepest questions about beauty, meaning, and our place in the universe. Today, art historian and critic John Seed will guide us through a selection of landscape paintings exploring the spiritual messages and concerns they embody. Sue will light the chalice here in the sanctuary. Those of you at home are invited to light your own chalice now. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind our remote participants to leave yourself muted. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with us as big and as loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. Please stand in body or spirit and sing the opening hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth, number 21.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour, of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for the gentle thoughts and mild, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We're glad you've joined us today. Our UUCC sanctuary sits on land that the indigenous people, primarily the Salinan tribe, historically inhabited. We honor their ongoing contribution to this region and give thanks for the opportunity to gather in faith on their unceded territory. Let us respect their legacy and protect their history as we occupy this sacred space. As Unitarian Universalists, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation run by the democratic process. We invite speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds, as well as community leaders, to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest that connect with the UU 7 principles and 6 values: equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, justice, interdependence, with love at the center. Today's service centers around the 3rd principle. We affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encourage spiritual growth in our congregations. My name is Margaret Biggs, and I am your worship associate for this morning's service. We extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning. If you wish, please introduce yourself or your guest. If you're not on the mailing list, please visit the UUCC website at uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. Members and friends, please check out the UUCC newsletter sent to you every week. This is a great way to keep up to date with our latest news. To see this or any of our past Zoom services, the recordings can be found on the UUCC website. So again, good morning and welcome to everybody. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of this community as well as a promise to which we aspire. Let us now sing the affirmation. We take this time to celebrate all those who are having a birthday this month. Birthdays are special. A day when we celebrate your entry into this world and honor your existence. If you have a birthday this month, please raise your hand. And when Julia or I call on you, please reveal your special date. Oh, okay. Margaret?
Number 10, the same as my shoe size.
Andy? Okay. Wayne?
My sister Carol Jean, who is on the line this morning, birthday on the 11th.
And Andy?
So today's my daughter's 35th birthday. Wow.
Yeah.
And her son, my grandson Liam, will be, my granddaughter Olivia's birthday will be on the 18th of this month. And we're going up to Seattle to celebrate that.
Ah, how fun. Oh, that's fun. Anybody on Zoom, Julia?
No birthdays on Zoom. Back to you.
The birthday candle honors all of our friends and family members who are also celebrating birthdays this month. Now is the time for sharing your heartfelt joys and concerns with this, your spiritual community. Please feel free to come forward and briefly express a personal celebration, sorrow, reflection, or gratitude. The collective flames of these candles embody all of the joys and concerns which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. The work of art is born of the artist in a mysterious and secret way. From him it gains life and being. Nor is its existence casual and inconsequent, but it has a definite and purposeful strength, alike in its material and spiritual life. It exists and has power to create spiritual atmosphere. Let us join in a time of meditation, of prayer, and of silence. Let us seek the quiet and the calm, laying aside our struggles. And in that silence, may there be a reverence in our hearts, a thankfulness within our spirit, and a deepened understanding of the meaning of our lives. Let us enter the stillness. Light, shine in. Illuminate our inward view. Help us to see with clarity. Shine bright and true, so we may join our songs in new sounds that become full symphony. The second reading is an excerpt from a letter by Vincent van Gogh to his brother Theo. At present, I absolutely want to paint a starry sky. It often seems to me that night is still more richly colored than the day, having hues of the most intense violence, blues and greens. If only you pay attention to it, you will see that certain stars are lemony yellow, others pink or green, blue, and forget-me-not brilliance. And without my expatiating on this theme, it is obvious that putting little white dots on a black blue is not enough to paint a starry sky. Please stand in body or spirit and sing "The Morning Hangs a Signal," number 40. Today's talk is titled "The Spiritual Side of Landscape Painting," to be delivered by John Seed. John Seed is a professor emeritus in art and art history at Mount San Jacinto College. He is former president of Greenspace and currently serves on the boards of the Sam Francis Foundation and Cambria Center for the Arts. He is the author of Disrupted Realism, Paintings for a Distracted World, and More Disruption, Representational Art in Flux, which are both available at the Mincing Mockingbird here on Main Street between Arlington and Sheffield on their art book table. This is his fourth art talk at UU Cambria. John?
Margot, thank you for the lovely introduction, and being here the fourth time, this is kind of like the Saturday Night Live hosting experience of Cambria. So to be back 4 times, I'm not like quite at Steve Martin level, but I'm getting there. And being a little more subdued, I just so respect the lovely values of this community and the sense of kindness that you feel the moment you park your car outside, honestly. So it's lovely to see my friends and neighbors and to be asked back. And make sure that the clicker is working. By the way, if you haven't heard me speak before, I want to give you a little sense of expectation. My sister Pamela is here today, so I think she will laugh when I say this because she'll know it's true. I enjoy speaking, but I'm not always accurate. But I'll do the best I can, and PowerPoint will hopefully keep me on track. And let's start with that. So when I moved to Cambria, one of my first experiences was to go painting with Art Van Ryn, who I knew was a great friend to a lot of you and who everyone misses. But I went out with the Wednesday Irregulars, and we went out by the coast with our folding easels and took in this landscape. And what a sense of gratitude I had about being here, and a strong spiritual sense that goes with this place that I know everyone who lives here feels. And painting is a wonderful vehicle to let that feeling come into your life experience. And that's really what gave me the idea for today's talk, is that landscape painting, it is much more than just mixing the right green and choosing the right brush. It really is a meditation on our life experience. These notes are really for me, not for you. I've always been told when you make a PowerPoint, don't put too much language on the screen, but I did. Because it just reminds me of a few things I want to say to you, and then it's going to be mainly pictures after this. I wanted to say that landscape painting, in the whole of art history, it's actually fairly new, especially in Western art, for a number of reasons. But I'm going to tell you that, well, yes, there were hints of interest in the landscape in art as early as ancient Egypt. We don't really have examples of Greek or Roman landscape painting. If there was any, maybe we have descriptions. But it really came to Europe in the 17th and 18th century. China is the ancient home of landscape painting. So I think that's very interesting. In Europe, we're going to see that landscape painting started out depicting myth and history. So they weren't so much about the experience of the landscape, but they were great theatrical backdrops. And when we get to Romanticism, when we get to the 18th and 19th century, then the landscape becomes a stand-alone, legitimate art subject. And today, walk into Ealing Gallery here in Cambria, or definitely in Carmel, and you will see the still life and the portrait and the landscape and the accepted genres of art making. You might be interested to know that that came from Amsterdam. That Amsterdam was the first place that there were really commercial art galleries where ship captains that had some extra money because they just offloaded their ship would go in and say, for example, I'd like a seascape. And even today in Europe, the 1 meter wide canvas is called the Marine because that was the standard seascape picture that the sea captains would want. That doesn't really have to do with the spiritual in art, does it? But here I go rambling, but I'm going to refocus again. And in modern art, I'm going to show you some abstract paintings that have a grounding in landscape. So that's where we're going. Let's make some progress. Looking back at Egyptian art, and I wouldn't even maybe call this a painting. It's actually a relief that's been painted. It's a funeral painting. But if I had to say one or two things about it, I would say this Egyptian landscape was really about dominating the landscape. And Egyptian society, took, several thousand years to establish themselves. It was a very, very conservative society where the pharaoh was considered a manifestation of a god in human form. So the role of Egyptian art was to show that the landscape was being mastered. And there's a great sense when you look at the fronds at the papyrus, behind these figures in the weird different scales, behind the geese and the ducks, you can see it is highly organized, that the papyrus have become like ribbons or stripes. And that was what had to be done to nature and to the human form, was to organize everything. And maybe there's a spirituality in that, in making order of your experience for human progress. But this is such a rich and wonderful tradition. For more than 1,000 years, landscape has been a core subject of Asian art and Chinese art, Korean art, Japanese art, and there's a great tradition called the literati tradition. And roughly speaking, where this came from was that when very, very cultured men, often mandarins, of course Mandarin means you were an expert in, you were kind of a scribe in reading and writing and poetry, when you became disgusted with the city and with politics, which I'm there, I don't know if you're there, but you felt that way, you might take yourself out to the countryside. And look what the countryside does for those beautiful little, I'll call them shacks, but they're better than shacks. They're really temples. Look what it does for the experience of someone who's out there. They take in a great mystery of atmosphere and fog. Doesn't that feel familiar to you this morning? And the Chinese painters were wonderful at leaving things blank to represent atmosphere. And just in black and white, there's so much space that you would have to fill in, maybe through meditation and contemplation. But the great literati painters saw the mystery in landscape, they saw the spirit of aliveness everywhere in the landscape, and they left quite a bit open for themselves and for you in their experience. And I should also say that the ideal of culture in this period, for men and for women, was to expertly play a musical instrument. So Jan, you're there, definitely, right? To also paint expertly and to write poetry. If you did all three of those things at a high level, you were cultured. So I think when I look at this Venetian painting from the 15th century, this painting by Bellini, which is in the Frick Museum in New York City, I think I'm seeing a kind of an Asian set of values brought into Western painting, which I don't know if that's true or not, but look at St. Francis. He finds his place in nature after study and after essentially living as a hermit in the cave behind him. There's a little aspect of vanitas, of Hamlet, if you will. He has a skull, maybe of a saint, or someone earlier in his brotherhood behind him on the desk. He's been studying the Bible, but he is released by coming out to nature. And as he holds out his hands, he's both taking in nature, but symbolically he's getting stigmata. He is like a second Christ. And it's been said that St. Francis spoke what's called a green language, and that meant that he spoke the language of nature and of animals. First Dr. Dolittle, you tell me. But his spirituality is in this fantastic, almost panoramic experience of coming out of meditation into the world and appreciating it in its totality. And look how detailed that is compared to the Chinese painting. The Western painters, the oil painters, absolutely every detail, I'm sure down to his toes, if I didn't have text down at the bottom, are revealed to you in oil painting. This painting isn't very often seen, but I think it's magnificent. It's a good deed framed by the landscape. And we can see here that St. Jerome has realized it's like a parable. When your enemy is in pain, maybe if you remove their pain, they won't be your enemy. So he's taking a thorn out of the lion's paw. And he does it in his hermitage, where he has been contemplating and praying and meditating, and everything spreads out around him into this great landscape and townscape. And I want to point out one thing just, to make you laugh, because it makes me laugh. I don't know if I have a pointer this morning, but do you notice the leaping lion attacking St. Jerome over on the right? I think maybe Patinier had a house cat, but I don't think he'd ever seen a lion leap. Maybe he had a dog. But the leaping lion is not very accurate. Doesn't even look like a lion, but that's called continuous narrative, when you show two aspects of one scene on one canvas. So obviously the saint was, with his donkey, was coming into the scene and was attacked, but later they become friends. So a wonderful, wonderful visual panorama and a little bit of human wisdom inserted into that as theater. I think I'm borderline here. You came for a painting of landscape, and you're seeing a naked Venus in the corner. Did I maybe misrepresent the topic? Well, I want to say something about this. This was a kind of a fantasy which many artists had in the Renaissance about relating to the classics, relating to the Greeks, and relating to the Romans. And what's being depicted here is a feast of Bacchus, a bacchanal, and of course it was really an orgy. The ancient Greeks drank wine that was spiked with some kind of a hallucinogen, and they would go out in the woods and they'd have ceremonies, and there would be sexual acts, and there'd be drinking, and there'd be lewdness, there'd be, all these things. But it had at its heart a kind of religious intent as well. And I think when you see Venus, who of course is the symbol of the city of Venice, there in the corner, she's both there to make you say, wow, what a lovely figure. I mean, that's part of it. But she may be an early image of Mother Earth as well, reminding you that to be in the sacred grove is feminine, and the sacred grove is where things are reproduced, and the sacred grove is where you feel your full beauty and aliveness of life in every way. So I think that's a spiritual landscape, at least borderline, along with being a great nude. And one more, see how I'm trying to work with this theme of the landscape being a backdrop for history and myth and moral teachings? In this painting, 17th century painting by Poussin, 3 shepherds have been wandering, I guess, away from their sheep, so they're derelict. They're not taking their responsibilities, but they come to a sarcophagus, they come to a coffin from earlier times. And there's an inscription which one of them has his finger on, and he's reading, and it says, Et in Arcadia ego. And those of you who took Latin in high school, I'm sure there are some of you, it basically says, even in paradise, even in Arcadia, I am here. And the I is death. So it's a painting about Thanatos. It's a painting about the constant presence of death. And by the way, in the previous painting, the symbol of Venus was fertility and beauty and sensuality. We have another woman here, we have death visiting. And she puts her hand on the shoulder of a young man, and look at his eyes, he looks back at her and says, oh, not yet. There's more I need to do here. But this is also an allegorical painting because it tells us that the kind of incentive to all poetry and painting and culture is the knowledge of death, because it motivates you to experience life and to create. As Salvador Dali once said, death makes everything erotic. I'll leave that out there for a moment. Wow. Yeah. Okay, you're hoping for some more pure landscapes. We're getting there. I would say that the landscape really evolved most in Holland for a couple of reasons. One is they had so much flat territory. You could get up on a hill and you could see so far and you could paint so much. And you will notice that the Van Rystal painting, The View of Haarlem, I'm going to say that it's 2/3 heaven, because for a long time in Renaissance paintings, you'd have maybe a window framing the clouds. You get a view of heaven, the idea of the sky as a place where the spirituality opens up. But you also have the very, very grand church with its spire in the distance, so you have that reminder of the presence of religion. But you have well-tilled fields, you have a beautiful lake for irrigation, you have some tiny cows. This is what you call the golden age of Dutch landscape painting, where landscape becomes a true subject and the landscape itself becomes more of a character and has more of a mood and an atmosphere, rather like in Chinese painting again. And then when we hit full Romanticism, and Germany was the root, the heart of Romantic thinking. It showed up first in novels and, of course, in music as well. Caspar David Friedrich the Wanderer does something remarkable, and it's something modern. And here it is. A little drum roll. What is it? Okay. He puts you in the position of contemplating the landscape, because we're not looking at this. It's not a portrait. We're not looking at the young man and his features and saying, how are you today? He turns around and he lets you in your imagination stand in and have that experience. And you become like him and you think, what's next? What could happen? What's below the clouds? What's in the future? What's in the mist? It is a fantastic painting about the act of looking and about the act of experiencing. And, when you have mystery, you have spirituality. What was it? I'm going to misquote the poet Lorca. Remember I said it wasn't accurate, but I'm going to be close. Lorca once said, in the end, all we have is mystery. I hope I got close. Turner. I think Turner is the painter who more than any other gave landscape a mood. Took it even further than Asian culture had. And I want to tell you something kind of heartbreaking about Turner. His mother was mentally ill and was in Bedlam. He really was very close to his father, but his mother was put away. And I've heard one art critic say that sometimes the sunsets in Turner's paintings are his mother's screams. It's a powerful way to think about it, but it was a difficult time and a joyous time. But in his rainbow, here the rainbow coming down in the cathedral, you can also see there's that sense of something we still have as a symbol of the rain coming and things starting over and beauty and iridescence. And Turner's skies, toward the end of his career, they became so rich and so abstract that the executor of his estate actually destroyed some. Because people were afraid of abstract paintings. Like, don't go there. That's like the devil's painting. And, it was more than people could handle. Here in the United States, the Hudson River School were some painters that looked at the Hudson River Valley before it was populated, who saw a kind of a spiritual permission, if you will, for America as it was formed. And they painted these, very, very large scale, very, very grand paintings, maybe inspired by the Dutch painters. But they give us a land of possibility. They give us a land of promise. I guess you could say, if you flip it, it's also colonial idealization as well. Taking permission to occupy lands that others had occupied. That needs some revisiting. But as far as giving us magnificent vistas, it's hard to beat them. We had that wonderful reading from Vincent van Gogh in our that Margaret gave, and I want to tell you that the background of Starry Night is that in Dutch painting by the 19th century, there was a very, very common kind of painting or print that people had in their homes called a nativity painting. There was a Star of Bethlehem, and Vincent van Gogh wanted to be a minister before he was a union organizer, but he wanted to be a minister first. And so there's always, I think, a spiritual feeling. You can see that there's a church here ahead of him in this nighttime picture. But he really took the nativity painting and he made it cosmic. And of course, he loved Japanese culture. A Japanese prints in his collection, there's a bit of yin and yang in the sky. So he took us beyond just a kind of a common religious print and gave us a whole cosmic experience where we're connected to the universe. And didn't you love his comments that, stars couldn't just be a white dot? They might be lemon yellow, or they might be purple. Paul Gauguin, long before he went to Tahiti, went to a Catholic boys' school. He had a wonderful teacher he loved and who inspired him, and that teacher taught him, and it stayed with him for his lifetime. You always want to ask, wherever you are in life, where do we come from? What are we? And where are we going? 3 essential questions. And he applied them to Polynesian culture, which in some ways he fantasized, but he made Polynesia a new Eden, and he made the men and women the new Adams and Eves, and all of that. And by adding post-impressionist color and restating these questions, he gave us something very, very fresh and very inspiring. Edvard Munch, I don't know, his mural, his great mural in Oslo of the sun, to me it's almost a nuclear sun. It's like an almost unendurable power, like Van Gogh's painting, but even more supercharged, even telling us there's a power beyond what we can imagine. And if you try to put that in a landscape image, look how it radiates forever, even beyond the edges of the canvas. Monet gave us landscape paintings, but look what he left out. He left out the horizon. And so much of landscape painting is about the sky, the horizon, the cosmos. He said, look down, and you're going to have a wonderful experience. Just life reflected. Take life and poeticize it by looking where you wouldn't normally look and looking down. And you'll see yourself in a reflected painting, as well as the weeping willows and the lotuses. Georgia O'Keeffe, when she painted in New Mexico, she had a little bit of a caustic view of religion. I know she fought with the Catholic Church to get her adobe. She said it took her 20 years to get her home away from the Catholic Church. It was a Catholic building. But she tended to show the landscape as if the cross were there almost blocking you. I think you see it there in the black cross. There's this wonderful landscape, but it's almost like you have to get past literal spirituality. You have to get past the cross, and you can see it through there. I think she felt a little bit better about sailors and their maritime crosses. She felt the sense that that was a monument for those who'd been lost at sea, and she really, really liked the little decorations at the edge of the cross. So she tended to paint the people in the landscape without the people being there, mainly because I think people annoyed her. And speaking of people annoying you, I've got several painters now that had that kind of feeling of being hermits or being on their own. Agnes Pelton worked near Palm Springs, and only recently has her career really been talked about, but she worked in New Mexico for a while, and then I think in Palm Desert, and she was part of a group that wanted to carry painting beyond the appearance of the physical world through new concepts of space, color, light, and design to imaginative realms. And that's the word I want to kind of set out there to just let it resonate a little bit, imaginative. And then comes her work, awakening memory of the Father. So she used the empty landscape as a place to revisit her memory and her past, and almost in a Freudian sense to see what came up from her unconscious. And childhood memories and emanations, came onto the landscape as if it were a theater set for her mind. Jackson Pollock, do you think he's a landscape painter? Well, we could have an argument about that, but to make the argument happen, I'm just going to give you a quote. He said, "I don't imitate nature, I am nature." And it was that which unlocked Helen Frankenthaler, who borrowed her technique from Pollock. She loved the idea of painting on the floor and letting the paint soak in. So in her Mountains and Sea, you can see that she's gone inside to the world of the imagination, and she's letting the flow of the paint generate the image. It's almost as if you're saying the role of the painter isn't so much to control or to represent, but to let the feeling come through you. And that's where we're going in some of our final paintings. Agnes Martin was also somebody who, after a life in New York, went out to the desert, built an adobe, and lived off the grid. Often, ate very, very simple meals, so she had a very ascetic life. And if you know something about Agnes Martin, she had a very, very difficult early life that included bouts of schizophrenia. So she had mental illness and had to try and control her own mind. And the way she did that was through painting. Her paintings are immensely disciplined, and when you see them in person, they're immensely delicate. And she told people that to get to nature, she had to clear everything out first. She had to just let everything be gone. And then look what comes through in her painting. This is one that she did in New Mexico. So hints of the landscape color and the sky color coming out in a very, very regular, disciplined way. And here we go. This is my full circle moment because I'll come back in a second. This makes me think of the Egyptian art, where two kinds of discipline. On the one hand, they were building a civilization and, disciplining nature. Agnes Martin had to do it in her own mind for her own sanity. But I know I'm going over and over, and you're thinking, this guy, we're not inviting him back because it's 25 minutes. But yeah, let me just give you a few more, and then I will step away. But I guess I overbooked it. I wanted to say, did you know that one of the great Chinese landscape painters of the 20th century lived in Pebble Beach? Chiang Dai-Chen, he was a great painter and a forger, continued to make literati paintings here on the Central Coast, and he got in a fight with the mayor of Carmel because they were chaining the trash cans to cypress trees, and he thought that was a violation of the spirituality of the trees, which is really interesting. I wanted to put a few contemporary paintings out there. Inga Essenhai, she has a wonderful way of letting nature and its suggestiveness just go to the next level and being able to capture that with a paintbrush to create an imaginative world that's rooted in her own dreams. Wonderful painter I've seen in New York. Emma Webster is the daughter of a high school friend of mine who has been working with all kinds of ways to generate landscapes that are both handmade but look a little bit, how do I say, otherworldly and even robotic. Even artificial in some way. And the way that she takes you into this little zone that she calls the Nightingale Theater, it's like a darker version of what the Venetian painting we saw today did. It's surrounded by an ocean, but it's a glade in an ocean over a promontory, a little bit of San Simeon Point, but with a dash of Alfred Hitchcock. And one more thing I wanted to say, did you know that a lot of the abstract paintings coming out of New Zealand and Australia are landscapes? Because the Aboriginal people, for many years, sang their hikes through the landscape, because that was their way of remembering directions. And they also, kind of turned those songs into imagined aerial views and abstract paintings and, letting all of that come out in their representations, which are fundamentally abstract, because they don't have that tradition of, the rigid space and perspective and organization and all of that in Western painting. So they are between landscape and representation and abstraction. And my closing thought is, as the world has become more crowded, depictions of the landscape in painting have shifted. Once shown as backdrops for human narratives, they now serve as opportunities for contemplation and inner experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John.
Of course, Margaret.
The morning offering will now be given and received. Please remember, we are a self-sustaining congregation and provide all financial resources for our many ministries. We recognize the spiritual value of generosity and invite you to participate. If you are viewing this service remotely, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. And thank you. Our thanks for all the gifts given and received for the work of this community. Please stand in body or spirit and sing the closing hymn, Winds Be Still, number 83.
Harmony.
As we prepare to extinguish the chalice, let us recite the valediction. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in. Please extinguish your chalice at home now. Now let's form a circle and join hands. John?
All right, well, may we all love and experience and live in our tremendous, beautiful local landscape, and either through the act of making art or simply through the act of imagination, may the landscape enrich all of us and help us endure the world and interact with the world and sustain the world.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.